Have you ever wanted to turn your impoverished desert tribe into the largest caliphate the world has seen? Wait no longer, for I will teach you how to play as Najd, overcome your early threats, consolidate all of Arabia under your sovereignty, and set yourself up for the Jihad Achievement. Let's begin. One of the biggest challenges when starting as Najd is how terrible your land is. We only start with a combined 11 development, we don't start with the first institution, feudalism, and not only that, but all of our land is desert terrain and has the arid modifier, giving us a whopping plus 65% development cost in all of our starting provinces. Another big hurdle is our starting ruler and heir, who both have terrible stats. This will hinder our mana generation and cause us to slightly stagnate in tech and developing the Renaissance later on. This isn't as big of an issue though, as with efficient mana management you should be able to overcome the monarch point crisis. Let's begin with the estates. Seize land, give out all of the monarch point privileges to the estates, give supremacy of the emirate to the emirs, oversight of the clergy and clerical state to the ulama, and finally, free enterprise and patronage of the arts to the burghers. Next, you should summon the diet. However, be careful. In my test runs, I noticed sometimes the only agendas you get to pick from involve developing your provinces, which we obviously don't want to do with our starting land. If you're a newer player, I even suggest restarting your campaign until you get an agenda that isn't this. If you get lucky, like I was in my playthrough, you'll get the agenda to get a port on the sea, which means claims on Hassa. The priorities for the agendas are firstly port on the sea, followed by anything else doable except developing your starting provinces. Before unpausing, you should be able to send a royal marriage to the Ottomans at the beginning of the game. Set your attitude towards the Mamluks as threatened. Scornful insult the Mamluks, which will improve relations with the Ottomans, and when you can send another diplomat, send one to begin improving relations with the Ottomans. When they turn friendly, you should be able to ally them immediately and will begin currying favors with them afterwards, but in the meantime, set your national focus to military. Build 2 infantry units up to force limit. Set your army maintenance to 0 unless you got a claim on Hassa from the agenda, and make both your heir and ruler a general. In my playthrough, I actually got my heir as a 2 siege pip general, which is pretty handy in our early wars. Send your 3rd diplomat to ally Hormuz, who we will need in our war against Hassa. You may need to royal marry or improve relations with them, but in the end they should turn friendly and you should be able to ally them. When a diplomat frees up, begin building a spy network on Hassa to get a claim, unless you got a claim from the mission, in which case build it on Dawasir or Shamar. If you followed the guide so far, you should have an alliance with both the Ottomans and Hormuz. You should have 1 diplomat creating favors with the Ottomans, and 1 diplomat building a spy network on Hassa, except if you got a claim from the agenda, in which case that diplomat should be building a spy network on either Shamar or Dawasir. Set Hufuf and Qatif as provinces of interest. Move your troops to the eastern border and declare war calling Hormuz in on promise of land. In my playthrough, Hassa was only allied to Baluchistan, who landed on Hormuz's capital while Hormuz and I were besieging Hassa's level 3 fort. If Hormuz's capital falls, then don't worry. As long as they stick with you until the siege of Qatif is over, then you don't need them anymore. If they do in fact peace out before the siege is finished, then you can actually force your game to crash by pressing both Alt and F4 at the same time, but this shouldn't happen too often since Hormuz stuck with me until the end of the siege. The only unfortunate thing was Mushasha to the north declared war and occupied Grain. This isn't as big of a deal, but I couldn't take as much land as I hoped to. In my particular campaign, I had a claim on Dawasir from building the spy network and noticed that Dawasir's ally, Ajam, wouldn't join in. Not to let the opportunity go by, I declared war on Dawasir, while still at war with Hassa. Yeah, this is a pretty aggressive start. Nevertheless, I carpet sieged all of Dawasir with no resistance. Now back to Hassa. Hormuz actually took a white piece in my playthrough, which was quite unexpected. If this happens in your game, then simply take all the provinces you can from Hassa and all the money you can take. If Hormuz is still in the war when you peace out, then there are 2 scenarios that could play out. Either they are okay with you taking everything for yourself, in which case do so. However, if they are not okay with you taking it all, give them the province of Qatar and peace out. In my playthrough, it was also time to peace out Dawasir. Simply take all their land and money. In my campaign, I actually chose not to core the provinces and instead release Dawasir as a vassal. You can do what I did or not, it doesn't really matter. Now by this point, the year was 1451 and I already had 10 favors with the Ottomans, but do not use them. We'll use them in the future to declare war on Karakoyunlu and the Mamluks and even to take money and manpower if we are in need of some. Now that you're at peace, you can set your army maintenance to 0 except if a rebellion is about to fire, in which case simply go to that province and fight the rebels. We want to state all of the land we conquered and make them full cores so they contribute more to our army and economy. After full coring, lower the autonomy in all of the provinces. This will make the rebellions fire sooner, but it's alright as these rebels are going to fire anyways even if you increase autonomy. Because of this, keep up the force limit and take Miltech 4. Let me make a brief note on the economy, which is just terrible. Even after full coring and lowering autonomy, I was making under 3 ducats a month in income. You will go into debt, but that's okay. For now, simply mothball your only fort to save money and set your army maintenance to 0 if you're not going to fight rebels or about to declare war. We will improve our economy by seeking better land. Speaking of which, it's time to declare war on one of your neighbors. Every game will be different, but in my game it was Mushasha who was the best target. In your game it might be Shamar, a Yemeni one province minor, or even Medina. In any case, you want to build up your nation to declare war on Mushasha as that will give you access to Iraq. If they're allied to QQ, you might need to wait until they're at war with the Mamluks to not join, but in my campaign they were only allied to Najran. Despite this being the best option I had, it was still hard as both my enemies had level 3 forts, while my force limit was just at 9, which was enough to siege both of them. I stack wiped Mushasha's drilling army and sat on their fort until I occupied it. Najran in my south besieged my vassal's capital quickly and moved on to my capital. If this happens, simply set the defensive edict and you should win the base race every time. When piecing out Mushasha, you don't need to full annex them. Just take grain if they took it from Hassa and all of the provinces, leading you to have a border with QQ. At this point in my playthrough, I decided to take the privilege from the burghers, indebted to the burghers, which will give you 5 loans at 1% interest each. This is insanely good as you'll get much more money for lower interest compared to regular bank loans. Pay off the bank loans if you took any, and get ready to declare war on Shamar. Right after I pieced out Mushasha, I waited for the provinces to core and declared war on Shamar. In my game, they were allied to Medina and Makuria, so I called in my ally Hormuz since I had 10 favors with them already. With our forces combined, there was no challenge whatsoever. Just wipe Shamar's troops and siege the capitals. I white-pieced Makuria, annulled Medina's alliance with the Mamluks, and full sieged Shamar. Right after piecing out with Shamar, my ruler actually died and I got the tribal succession event, which gave me an amazing 666 ruler. Not only that, but the heir was a 644 himself, meaning I would have no issues with mana generation. Regardless of your luck, you want to stay up to date on Miltech and save the rest of your monarch points for spawning the Renaissance, which we will do in Iraq. During the peace between your wars, you want to keep your army maintenance at 100% to destroy any rebellions that pop up and begin building a spy network in QQ as we will be declaring war soon. In my playthrough, QQ was actually getting beat up by a mixture of the Mamluks, Ajam, and even Hisan Kaifa. While this was both good as I wouldn't have to even call in the Ottomans, the Mamluks ended up returning cores to Mushasha, blocking me off from QQ. I had to declare war on Mushasha after the truce, take their Iraqi provinces, and build a second spy network in QQ in order to get a CB. In your game, QQ will probably still be strong, so simply call in Ottomans with favors, and it should be a simple enough war. From this, take all provinces leading up to a border with the Mamluks, and prioritize taking Baghdad as we will be spawning the Renaissance there. Now that Iraq is in our hands, we'll keep up with our previous strategies by stating and fully coring the land. Set the development cost edict in Baghdad and smash the development buttons. You should have loads of admin and diplo if you only took Tech 4. You might not have as many mill points, which is good anyways, as I recommend opening with a military idea group. Regardless, develop Baghdad until the Renaissance is spawned. At this point, your income should stabilize and you should be making a surplus now. I myself had 20 force limit at this point. Also around this time, you should take Admin Tech 5 and thus begin your idea selection. In my campaign, and what I highly recommend you to do, is to open Quantity, followed by Religious, and then Influence. If you prefer, you could swap out Quantity for Defensive, but I think Quantity would do better in Nejd's situation. Depending on when the time is right, you'll want to declare war on the Mamluks. This will be a hard war at first, but with Ottoman support you should have no issue with eventually annexing all of Syria in the peace deal. I declared war calling in the Turks and braced as the Mamluks swarmed almost 40k troops into Iraq. This is normal if you have Iraq by the time you fight the Mamluks and will devastate your economy, as Baghdad is one of your most developed provinces. In my game, Mamluks were allied to Hormuz, who I rivaled earlier, and joined the war. I wiped Hormuz's troops and let the Turks do the heavy lifting in the Syrian forts. I will recommend to be cautious though, as I had both my armies defeated in separate occasions thanks to my negligence. So be careful, pay attention, keep an eye on your troops, and only engage when you have Ottoman backup. In the peace deal, you'll likely have to give one or two provinces to the Ottomans and take all of Syria to the coast for yourself. You might also want to take Jerusalem in this war. I didn't because I didn't pay enough attention, but Jerusalem will give you a lot of good modifiers that you'll need sooner rather than later, so take that if you can. Immediately after the peace deal, release Syria as a vassal and give them the fort of Karak so we don't have to be paying maintenance for it. After neutralizing the Mamluks, you've gotten rid of the biggest threat in the early game, and at this point you can snowball hard into a position where you can fulfill the requirements for the Jihad achievement by owning 500 Sunni provinces. As mentioned, you should take religious after quantity, followed by influence. Your future expansion routes will include Yemen, Ethiopia, and the Swahili coast for the gold mines, Egypt, Persia, and eventually India. In the future, you'll have to deal with the Ottomans, but that should be no threat if you snowball correctly. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it helps you out in your Najd campaign. If you enjoyed the content, then please leave a like, and if you think I should make a follow-up guide for where I go after 1484 with my playthrough, then let me know in the comments. Thank you and have a nice day.